The strangest secret of success is that we become what we think about. But here is the other side of the truth. Most people think the wrong thoughts, and that is why they stay poor. It is not chance, it is law. In this lesson, I will uncover the real reasons why most people stay poor. You'll learn why poverty is not a matter of bad luck or unfair breaks, but of drifting, wrong thinking, and lack of definite goals. You'll see how the same law that creates wealth, when misused, creates poverty. And you'll discover how to turn that law in your favor so you can escape the pattern that traps 95% of people and join the 5% who succeed. Think about this. We live in the richest age the world has ever known. Opportunity surrounds us in every direction. And yet the majority of people struggle, barely getting by, living paycheck to paycheck, hoping for luck. Why? Because they have never been taught the truth about the mind, about goals, about attitude. They follow the crowd, they drift through their days, they let fear and worry dominate their thoughts. And life, as it always does, reflects those thoughts back to them. That is why poverty is not mysterious, it is predictable, but so is success. And once you see the difference, you will never again wonder why some rise while others remain stuck. In the next 50 minutes, we are going to uncover the truth about why most people stay poor. We'll begin with the tragic statistics that reveal how the majority live and die without ever realizing their potential. We'll see how neglect, conformity, and wrong thinking create poverty as surely as weeds grow in an untended field. We'll talk about how fear, doubt, and envy shape lives of failure, while faith, gratitude, and service shape lives of success. I'll show you the role of goals, why the absence of a definite aim keeps people trapped, and how discipline of thought can transform the direction of a life. And before we finish, I'll leave you with a challenge that, if you accept it, will begin to move you out of the 95% who fail and into the small minority who live with freedom, abundance, and peace of mind. So stay with me, because once you see the truth about why people stay poor, you will also see the truth about how to escape it. Here's something most people completely miss, and it explains more failure than almost anything else. Imagine 100 young men, all starting out at age 25. They are full of hope, full of energy, full of expectation. Ask each one of them, do you want to succeed? And almost every single one will answer yes. Ask them if they plan to fail, and not a single hand will rise. They all intend to live well, to be secure, to achieve something with their lives. And yet, follow those same 100 men until they are 65 years old, and here is what you find. Only one will be rich. 4 more will be financially secure. 5 will still be working because they have to, and 54 will be broke, dependent on others for survival. 95 out of 100 will fail. Now stop and think about that. 95%, the overwhelming majority, end their lives in disappointment. Not because they wanted to, not because they planned to, not because they were less intelligent or less talented than the rest, but because they drifted. They went along with the crowd. They assumed that doing what everyone else was doing would be enough. But the crowd fails, and so they failed too. That is the tragic statistic, the truth that explains why so many stay poor. Picture it another way. Imagine a great ship leaving harbor. One ship has a captain, a crew, a charted course, and a definite destination. That ship may face storms, it may be blown off course, but with adjustments it will almost always arrive. The other ship is just as strong, just as capable, but it has no captain, no crew, no chart, no destination. It is simply turned loose upon the sea. What happens to it? It will drift until it wrecks. It cannot do otherwise. And that is the perfect picture of most lives. The 95% drift. They never chart a course. They never decide on a goal. They never take control of their minds. They simply do what the crowd does, and the crowd is drifting too. Now think of the stakes. If you do not take control of your life, if you do not decide where you are going, you will drift with the 95%. The years will slip by. You will be busy, always working, always occupied, but at the end you will discover you have gone nowhere. That is the price of drifting. It wastes the most valuable resource you possess, time, and it wastes the greatest power you possess, your mind. And once the years are gone, they cannot be recovered. This is why I say most people do not fail because they choose to. They fail because they never choose at all. They never decide. They never take the helm, and so they drift into failure by default. That is why poverty is not an accident. It is the natural consequence of drifting, of living without a chart, without a goal, without direction. And now, let me set the stage for what comes next. If poverty is not the result of chance or bad luck, if it is not the result of unfair breaks or cruel circumstances, then what is it? If 95% of people fail, what really explains their failure? That is the truth we must uncover. Because once we know why poverty happens, we can also see how to escape it. Most people, when they see poverty, believe it must be the result of bad luck, of misfortune, of something outside of a person's control. They point to circumstances, to the economy, to politics, to the neighborhood in which someone was born, and they say, that is why people are poor. But here is the truth, and it is a truth very few ever face. Poverty is not an accident. Poverty comes by neglect. Poverty comes from drifting, from doing what everyone else is doing, from never deciding upon a definite purpose. Just as surely as weeds will overtake an untended field, poverty will overtake an untended mind and an undirected life. Let us think carefully about this. Failure is not mysterious. It is not hidden. It is not something that strikes at random. Failure is predictable. It is the result of small neglects, repeated daily, year after year. It is the result of never thinking for yourself, of never setting a goal, of never daring to imagine what you could be. Most people don't fail suddenly. They fail gradually, by inches, until one day they wake up and realize that life has passed them by. Poverty, then, is not something that happens. It is something that is allowed to happen. And it is allowed by inaction, by neglect, by drifting. Now consider two men. One decides to think for himself. He sets a goal, even a small one, and directs his thoughts toward it each day. He asks himself, what can I do today that will move me forward, even a little? And because he asks, he begins to see opportunities. He begins to grow. His life gains direction. The other man never asks. He never decides. He wakes because the alarm clock rings. He goes to work because that is what everyone does. He comes home, eats, watches, sleeps, and repeats. He never questions, never plans, never chooses. And because he never directs his thoughts, life directs them for him. He spends years going through the motions, and at the end, he discovers he has gone nowhere. Which man will succeed, and which will fail? The answer is as certain as the law of gravity. This is why I say failure is as predictable as success. The man who neglects his mind will fail just as surely as the farmer who neglects his field. The man who drifts with the crowd will fail just as surely as the ship that drifts without a captain will wreck. And the man who decides upon a goal, who directs his mind toward it, who persists in its pursuit, will succeed just as surely as the seed planted in good soil will bring a harvest. These are not accidents. They are consequences. So remember this. Poverty is not caused by lack of intelligence. It is not caused by lack of opportunity. It is caused by wrong thinking, by neglect, by drifting, by conformity. And because it is caused, it can be prevented. And because it can be prevented, it can be escaped. But only if we are willing to face the truth and take responsibility for our thoughts. Now that we see that poverty is not an accident, we must ask, what exactly causes it? What are the roots from which it grows? For if we can see the root causes, we can also see the remedies. And that is where we must go next. Here is the first and perhaps the most dangerous root of poverty. It is not a lack of money, it is not a lack of opportunity, it is not even the presence of obstacles. The first root of poverty is wrong thinking. The mind is like a fertile field, and it will always return what is planted in it. If you plant wheat, the soil will give you wheat. If you plant weeds, the soil will give you weeds. If you plant nothing at all, weeds will still grow, because weeds require no help to take root, and so it is with your mind. If you do not plant it with deliberate thoughts of purpose, faith, gratitude, and service, then weeds will appear automatically: fear, doubt, resentment, and envy. These weeds choke out vision. They smother hope. They poison possibility. And they create poverty as surely as thorns ruin a harvest. Think of the man who rises each morning with worry as his first thought. He worries about his bills, he worries about his debts, he worries about tomorrow. His mind is a garden filled with weeds. And because his mind is filled with lack, his actions reflect it. He hesitates to invest in himself, he avoids opportunities, he shrinks from risk. He never reaches out, never dares, never grows. And life, faithful to the law, mirrors his thoughts. His worries become reality, his debts deepen, his poverty increases. He believes he is cursed by circumstance, but he is only reaping the harvest of the weeds he allowed to grow. Now think of another man in the same situation. He too has debts. He too faces difficulty. But instead of feeding his mind with weeds, he chooses to plant seeds of faith and vision. Each day, he asks himself, what can I do to grow? How can I serve more? What value can I create today? His thoughts direct his actions. He studies, he improves, he looks for opportunities. He dares where others hesitate. Slowly, his life begins to change. Opportunities appear, confidence grows, progress is made. The weeds of fear are replaced with the harvest of faith. The law, as always, returns what is planted. And this is what most people never understand. Poverty is created in the mind long before it is experienced in the world. The weeds of fear, doubt, envy, and resentment grow silently, invisibly, until one day they fill the whole garden. A man may blame his employer, his government, his neighbor, his luck, but the truth is plain, he neglected his own mind, and neglect always brings weeds. Now let me ask you, what thoughts are you planting? Do you dwell on what you lack or on what you can create? Do you let envy take root when you see the success of others? Or do you let their success inspire you to grow yourself? Do you allow resentment to sour your spirit? Or do you replace it with gratitude for what you already have? Because whatever you allow to dominate your mind will shape your life. This is law. It never fails. So remember, the first root of poverty is wrong thinking, the weeds of the mind. And unless you deliberately sow good seed, unless you plant faith, gratitude, purpose, and vision, weeds will grow by default, and the harvest will be failure. But wrong thinking has another form, one even more subtle and perhaps more destructive. It is the trap of conformity, of thinking not your own thoughts, but the thoughts of the crowd, and that is what we must uncover next. Now here is another root cause of poverty, one so common and so subtle that most never recognize it until it is too late. It is the trap of conformity. Most men and women look around at what others are doing, and without ever questioning, they assume that it must be the right way. They follow the crowd, they imitate the majority, they accept the opinions and habits of others as their own, and because the crowd fails, they fail too. They inherit the same results as those around them: struggle, lack, frustration, poverty. Conformity is easy, it feels safe, it provides the comfort of numbers. But in the end, it is nothing more than drifting with the 95% who never succeed. Think back to the tragic statistic we considered earlier: 100 young men starting out at 25, all full of hope, all expecting success. By 65, 95 of them have failed. Only 5 succeed. Now ask yourself, what did the 95 do wrong? Were they lazy? No. Were they less intelligent? No. Did they lack opportunity? Not always. They failed because they conformed. They did what everyone else was doing, never realizing that what everyone else was doing was leading straight to failure. Conformity is the opposite of courage. It requires no thought, no responsibility, no effort. It tells a man, just do what others do and you will be safe. But the truth is that following the crowd is the most dangerous thing you can do, because the crowd is drifting, and drifting always ends in wreckage. Picture again the ship without a captain, without a chart, without a destination. The sea does not care that the ship never chose a course. The winds will drive it, the tides will carry it, and sooner or later it will break upon the rocks. That is the picture of a life lived by conformity. Let me give you a story. A man takes a job he does not love, simply because that is what everyone around him does. A job is a job, he tells himself. He stays because others stay. He buys what his neighbors buy. He complains about what his coworkers complain about. He thinks the thoughts of the crowd. He follows the habits of the crowd, and he assumes that one day, somehow, things will work out. But they do not. After years of work, he is no better off, no more fulfilled, no more secure. He wonders why, and the answer is simple. He never thought for himself. He never chose his own course. He simply conformed, and conformity led him exactly where it always leads, into mediocrity and poverty. And this is the trap. Because everyone around you is conforming too, it feels natural, it feels safe. You tell yourself, if everyone is doing it, it must be right. But that is the lie. The truth is that if you do what everyone else is doing, you will get what everyone else is getting, and we know what they are getting. They are failing, they are broke, they are dependent. 95% of them will not succeed. Do you want their results? If not, then you must stop conforming. You must dare to think for yourself, to choose your own course, to take control of your mind and direct it deliberately. So remember this: poverty is not the result of chance. It is the result of wrong thinking, of neglect, of drifting, of conformity. And if wrong thinking creates poverty, then right thinking must create wealth. And the difference lies in what you give your mind to. That is the truth we must uncover next. Here is the truth that separates the few who succeed from the many who fail. We become what we think about. That is the strangest secret, and yet it is no secret at all. It has been written and spoken for thousands of years. Marcus Aurelius said, "A man's life is what his thoughts make of it." The book of Proverbs tells us, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." William James, the father of modern psychology, said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes of mind. All the great teachers, all the wise men, all the leaders of history have pointed to this same truth, and yet the majority of men and women live as though they had never heard it. They fill their minds with fear, with worry, with envy, with doubt, and then they wonder why their lives return only disappointment and poverty. But the law is plain. The mind returns what it is given. Think poverty, and you will have poverty. Think abundance, and you will have abundance. Now let us set the stakes clearly. If you allow negative thoughts to dominate your mind, your life will take the shape of those thoughts. A man who thinks constantly of lack will live in lack. He may work hard, he may struggle, he may sweat, but if his dominant thought is, "There is never enough," then life will mirror that belief, and he will never have enough. Another man thinks constantly of growth, of service, of improvement. He too may struggle, he too may face hardship, but because his thoughts are fixed on value and growth, he sees opportunities where the other man sees obstacles. He acts with confidence where the other acts with fear, and life mirrors his thoughts, rewarding him with progress and success. The difference between the two is not in circumstance, it is in thought. So, what is the solution? It is to take control of what you think about, to stop drifting, to stop conforming, to stop letting fear and doubt dominate your mind, and instead to set before your thoughts a clear, definite goal. This goal becomes the compass of your life. Without it, your mind will wander into weeds, into fear, into envy, into resentment. With it, your mind will have direction, purpose, and power. Write your goal on a card. Make it clear, make it specific, carry it with you. Read it every morning, every evening, and as often as you can throughout the day. Let it dominate your thoughts. And as you think of it, picture it as already achieved. Feel the gratitude of having it, expect it, and then act in harmony with it each day. Now let me give you a picture. A teacher sets her goal to inspire her students, to bring out the best in them. Each day, she thinks of how she can serve, how she can encourage, how she can teach more effectively. Slowly, her classroom becomes a place of growth. Her students rise to the level of her expectation. She may never be rich in money, but she is rich in purpose, and she is successful. A craftsman sets his goal to master his trade, to create work of beauty and quality. Each day, he thinks of how he can improve, how he can refine, how he can add value. Slowly, his skill grows, his reputation spreads, his life gains meaning. He, too, is successful. A businessman sets his goal to serve his customers better than anyone else. Each day, he thinks of how he can improve his service, how he can deliver more value, how he can create more satisfaction. Slowly, his business grows, his income rises, his wealth increases. He, too, is successful. In every case, the principle is the same. They became what they thought about. So remember this. You are today the sum total of all your thoughts up to this point, and you will become tomorrow what you think about today. That is the law. That is the truth. That is the strangest secret. Poverty is the harvest of wrong thoughts. Wealth is the harvest of right ones. The choice is always yours. But there is another truth we must add. For wealth is not only the product of goals and thoughts, it is also the product of service. And that is what we must uncover next. Now here is the other side of the law, and it is one that most people overlook. Life pays us in direct proportion to the service we render. Wealth is never an accident, never the result of chance. It is the direct consequence of value given, multiplied, and returned. Yet most people never understand this. They think only in terms of what they can get, never in terms of what they can give. They say, "This is all I am paid, so this is all I will do." And so they remain small, stagnant, resentful, trapped in poverty. But the men and women who rise, the 5% who succeed, live differently. They think in terms of service. They ask themselves each day, how can I add more value? How can I render more service than I am paid for? How can I lighten the load of others? And because they give more, life pays them more. This is law. It cannot fail. Now let us set the stakes clearly. If you do only the minimum, if you resent your work, if you hold back your effort, you are ensuring that poverty remains your companion. For the law cannot be cheated. You may demand more pay, more recognition, more reward, but if you give little, life will give little in return. On the other hand, if you give more than is expected, if you render more service than you are paid for, if you go the extra mile, you will inevitably be rewarded. Perhaps not immediately, perhaps not in the way you expect, but always, in the end, your rewards will match your service. That is why those who serve greatly are always rewarded greatly, and those who serve little are always rewarded little. Let me give you a picture. Two men open stores on the same street. One stocks his shelves, opens his doors, and waits. He does just enough to keep the business alive. He resents the long hours. He resents the customers. He resents the work. He gives only what he must. The other man asks himself, how can I serve my customers better today? How can I make this store a place they want to return to? How can I surprise them with more than they expected? He improves his displays. He greets people warmly. He adds small touches of care that make his service unforgettable. Slowly, word spreads. Customers return. His business grows. His income rises. He builds wealth. The difference between the two was not luck, not talent, not chance. It was service. And this is true in every field. A teacher who gives more to her students than her salary demands is rewarded with loyalty, respect, and satisfaction. A craftsman who adds extra care to his work builds a reputation that multiplies into opportunity and income. A professional who takes time to help, to guide, to serve beyond the job description earns trust, and trust always leads to reward. In every case, service is the seed, and wealth is the harvest. Now consider how this truth explains why so many stay poor. They think only of what they can extract. They resent their work. They complain about their pay. They do only the minimum, never realizing that in doing so, they are planting seeds of poverty. They believe they are being cheated, but they are cheating themselves, for the law will not reward them until they render service. They blame circumstances, employers, society, but the truth is plain. They never gave more than they were paid for, and so they were never paid for more than they gave. So remember this, wealth is service. To serve more is to earn more. To add value is to add income. To give beyond what is required is to secure rewards beyond what is expected. This is not philosophy. It is law. It is the way the world has always worked, and the way it will always work. But even with clear goals and service in abundance, one more quality separates the 5% who succeed from the 95% who fail. It is the rarest quality of all. It is persistence. And without it, no goal can be reached, no service can bear fruit, no success can be secured. And that is where we must turn next. Here is one of the greatest reasons why most men and women remain poor. They quit too soon. Almost everyone begins with enthusiasm. At the start of any new endeavor, there is energy, excitement, hope. A man sets a goal, writes it down, and for a few days or a few weeks, he pursues it with passion. But then the first obstacle appears. The first difficulty arises. Progress seems slower than expected, the results take longer than he hoped, and his enthusiasm begins to fade. Instead of pressing on, he allows discouragement to take root. He convinces himself that it was not meant to be, that perhaps he was foolish to try, and he quits. And with that decision, he joins the 95% who fail, not because they were incapable, not because the goal was unreachable, but because they quit before the harvest could appear. Think of the farmer again. He plants seed in the spring, but after a week he digs it up to see if it is growing. Seeing nothing, he grows impatient, declares the seed worthless, and abandons the field. He forgets that growth is invisible before it is visible, that the most important work happens beneath the surface long before it shows above ground. That is what most people do with their goals. They plant them, but they do not give them time. They expect instant harvests. They demand immediate results. And when they do not see them, they stop. They never realize that success requires time, persistence, and patience. Now think of the consequences of this habit. A man begins to improve himself. He studies for a week, and then he stops. He saves money for a month, and then he spends it. He starts a business, and at the first setback, he abandons it. Each time he quits, he trains himself to fail. Each time he quits, he makes quitting easier the next time. And soon, quitting becomes his way of life. He drifts from one thing to another, always beginning, never finishing, always hoping, never achieving. Poverty is the inevitable result, not because he lacked intelligence or talent, but because he lacked persistence. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a man digging for water. He digs 10 feet in one place, finds nothing, and quits. He digs 10 feet in another place, finds nothing, and quits again. He repeats this process a dozen times, always quitting too soon. Another man chooses one spot and digs deeper, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. At last he strikes water. The difference was not the soil, it was persistence. One man scattered his effort and gained nothing. The other persisted and gained everything. This is why most remain poor. They begin well but quit early. They mistake difficulty for defeat. They confuse slow progress with no progress. They fail to see that the law requires persistence, that growth is slow before it is sudden, that harvests come only to those who keep tending the field. Poverty, then, is not the punishment of the lazy alone. It is the punishment of the impatient, of the easily discouraged, of those who quit too soon. So remember this: most people remain poor, not because they never tried, but because they never continued. And if you would escape their fate, you must cultivate persistence, the rare quality that keeps you moving forward when others stop, that keeps you sowing when others abandon the field, that keeps you working in faith until the harvest appears. And now we must look at the other side of persistence, not just why most quit, but what happens when you refuse to quit. For persistence, when joined with a worthy goal and steady service, creates harvests beyond anything you can imagine. And that is where we must turn next. Now let us turn from the failure of those who quit too soon to the triumph of those who persist. For persistence is the quality that separates the dreamer from the doer, the beginner from the finisher, the 95% who remain poor from the 5% who succeed. Persistence is the force that carries you through when enthusiasm has faded, when obstacles loom, when the way is long and the progress invisible. And here is the truth. Every great achievement in history, every invention, every discovery, every fortune was born of persistence. Without it, nothing lasting is ever created. With it, almost anything is possible. Think of Thomas Edison, who tried more than 10,000 times before creating the electric light. 10,000 failures, 10,000 experiments that did not work. Most men would have quit after 10. Many would have quit after 100. Nearly all would have quit after 1,000. But Edison persisted. He refused to quit. Each failure taught him something. Each setback became a step forward. And because he persisted, the light came. Today, we take that light for granted, but it exists because one man refused to quit. That is the power of persistence. Now consider how this applies to wealth, to freedom, to success in your own life. The man who persists in saving, even when the progress seems small, eventually finds himself with security. The man who persists in studying, even when the learning is slow, eventually masters his craft. The man who persists in serving, even when the rewards are delayed, eventually rises to leadership. Persistence turns invisible progress into visible success. It transforms daily effort into long-term achievement. It creates the harvest that the impatient will never see. Let me give you another picture. Imagine two farmers. Both plant seeds in the spring. One waters and tends the field for a few weeks, sees no harvest, and abandons it. By autumn, his field is overrun with weeds, and he has nothing to show for his effort. The other continues. Day after day, he tends the soil, he waters, he pulls weeds, he trusts the process. For weeks, nothing seems to happen, but then, slowly, shoots appear. The field begins to grow. By autumn, his harvest is rich and abundant. The difference was not in the seed, nor in the soil, but in persistence. One quit and reaped nothing. The other persisted and reaped everything. So it is in life. Many begin, but few continue. Many plant, but few persist. That is why poverty is common and wealth is rare. For persistence is rare. But if you will cultivate it, if you will refuse to quit, if you will hold to your goal with faith and patience, then in time the law will reward you. The harvest will come. It must. The law cannot fail. So remember this. Persistence creates harvests. It is the bridge between desire and achievement, between thought and reality, between poverty and wealth. Without it, you will remain among the 95% who quit too soon. With it, you will join the 5% who succeed not by luck, but by law. And now we must turn to the final truth, the truth that the poor never discover. For wealth, once gained, is not the end. The final reward is not money, but freedom. It is not possessions, but peace. It is not applause, but fulfillment. And that is what we must uncover next. And now we come to the greatest difference between those who fail and those who succeed. It is not simply the difference between poverty and wealth, but the difference between dependence and freedom. For poverty is not only the absence of money. Poverty is bondage. It is dependence upon others for survival. It is the fear that grips a man when he knows he cannot stand alone, when his security rests in the hands of circumstances, of employers, of governments, of chance. Poverty is the constant anxiety of bills unpaid, of needs unmet, of a future uncertain. It is the quiet despair of knowing that you are not in control of your life, that you are at the mercy of others. That is why poverty is not only hard, it is degrading. It robs a man not only of comfort but of dignity. But wealth, rightly understood, is freedom. It is not simply the accumulation of money. It is the assurance that you are no longer bound by fear, that you have taken control of your destiny, that you have built a life that does not depend upon the whims of others. Wealth is the confidence of knowing you can provide for yourself and your family. It is the peace of mind that comes from having direction and security. And above all, it is the freedom to choose how you will live, where you will go, what you will become. Freedom is the true reward of success, and it is what the poor never discover. Think of the drifter at 65. He has worked his entire life, but he has nothing to show for it. He is still dependent, still insecure, still worried about tomorrow. He looks back over the years with regret and forward with fear. He is trapped, not because he lacked opportunity, but because he never took control of his mind, never set a goal, never persisted. Contrast him with the man who learned the law early. At 65, he is free, he has wealth, yes, but more than that, he has peace of mind. He looks back with satisfaction, forward with confidence. He is secure, independent, fulfilled. He is free because he discovered the power of his mind and used it deliberately. This is the true reward. For freedom is not given, it is earned. It is the harvest of right thinking, of persistent action, of faithful service. And once you taste it, you will never again settle for dependence. Once you know you can steer your own course, you will never again drift with the crowd. Once you experience the peace of mind that comes with freedom, you will never again surrender your thoughts to fear. But freedom, great as it is not the whole of success. For man was not made only to be free. He was made to live with meaning, with contribution, with fulfillment. And that is the final truth, the one that the poor never discover, the one that turns wealth into true success. And that is what we must see next. Now we come to the final truth, the one that completes the picture of success and explains why so many, even among those who achieve wealth, still remain restless and unsatisfied. Wealth alone is not enough. Possessions alone are not enough. Comfort, recognition, applause, these may please for a time, but they cannot satisfy the deeper hunger of the human spirit. True fulfillment is found not in what you gain, but in what you give. The poor never discover this. They are so consumed with their own lack, so focused on what they do not have, that they never lift their eyes to see the law of service. And yet it is this law that brings not only wealth, but meaning, joy, and peace. Think of it carefully. Every fortune ever built was built on service. Every advancement of civilization was born of one person asking, "How can I make things better? How can I give more? How can I serve?" The successful teacher is not the one who collects the largest salary, but the one who devotes herself to bringing out the best in her students. The successful craftsman is not the one who charges the highest price, but the one who pours his skill and care into his work, creating something of lasting value. The successful business owner is not the one who schemes to take the most from customers, but the one who gives them more than they expect, who treats them as honored guests, who serves them faithfully. In each case, service is the measure of true success, and fulfillment is its reward. Now let us consider the contrast. The poor man asks only, "What can I get?" His thoughts are filled with lack, with resentment, with envy. He works only because he must. He gives only the minimum, and he wonders why his life never improves. He believes he is being cheated, but in truth he is cheating himself. For life pays in proportion to service, and he renders little service. The successful man, on the other hand, asks, "What can I contribute? How can I give more than I am paid for? How can I make myself more valuable to others?" And because he gives more, he receives more. He does not chase fulfillment. Fulfillment comes to him as a natural consequence of service. Let me give you a picture. A doctor treats his patients not merely as cases, but as human beings, with care, with attention, with genuine concern. His practice grows, not because he advertises more, but because people know he serves them well. A shopkeeper improves his store, greets his customers warmly, makes them feel welcome. His business thrives, not by accident, but by service. A mother raises her children with patience, with love, with wisdom. Her success is not measured in money, but in the strength and character of her children. In every case, service is the seed, fulfillment is the fruit. This is why I say that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It is not simply money in the bank. It is not simply freedom from dependence. It is living each day in harmony with a purpose greater than yourself, rendering more service than you are paid for, adding more value than is expected, giving more than you receive. That is where true fulfillment lies. That is the secret the poor never discover. And so we arrive at the end of the journey. We have seen why most people stay poor: because they drift, because they neglect their minds, because they conform, because they quit too soon, because they never learn the law of thought, the law of persistence, the law of service. And we have seen what the few discover: that wealth, freedom, and fulfillment come to those who think deliberately, set worthy goals, persist in their pursuit, and serve others faithfully. Now it is time to gather this together into one final challenge. And now, as we close this lesson, let us step back and see the full picture. We began with the tragic statistic that has held true for generations. Of 100 men who start life at 25, by the age of 65, only 5 will succeed. 95 will fail not because they chose failure, not because they lacked talent or intelligence, but because they drifted, they conformed. They neglected the one great power that could have changed everything: their own minds. We saw how poverty is not an accident but a consequence, how failure is as predictable as success, because both are born of thoughts. We uncovered the weeds of fear, doubt, envy, and resentment, and saw how they choke out vision and create poverty just as surely as thorns ruin a harvest. We exposed the trap of conformity, the easy path of following the crowd. which feels safe but leads straight into the same failures that ensnare the majority. Then, we turned to the law of wealth. We saw that we become what we think about, that a clear, definite goal gives direction to the mind and power to the spirit. We saw that wealth flows not from luck but from service, that life pays in direct proportion to the value we render, and that those who give more always receive more. We saw that persistence, the rare quality of continuing when others quit, turns invisible effort into visible harvests, that the man who holds steady when progress seems slow eventually reaps rewards that the impatient will never see. And finally, we discovered the greatest reward of all, not merely money, not merely possessions, but freedom and fulfillment. Freedom from fear, freedom from dependence, freedom to steer your own course. Fulfillment from serving others, from living with meaning, from realizing a worthy ideal. So here is the affirmation I want you to carry with you. We become what we think about. Poverty is the harvest of wrong thoughts. Wealth, freedom, and peace are the harvest of right thoughts, persistently held and acted upon with service. This is law. It never fails. It is as certain as the rising of the Sunday. And because it is law, it places the responsibility squarely upon each of us. For your future will not be decided by chance, by fate, or by the crowd. It will be decided by the thoughts you allow to dominate your mind and by the service you render to others. That is the truth about why people stay poor, and it is the truth about why others succeed. So here is my challenge to you. Before this day ends, decide what you will give your mind to. Write it down. Make it clear. Make it worthy. Carry it with you. Guard your thoughts as you would guard treasure. Admit only what serves your purpose. Cast out everything else. Persist in it when progress is slow. Render more service than you are paid for. And trust the law to do its work. For if you do, you will never again drift. You will never again wonder why others succeed while you remain behind. You will know, beyond all doubt, that success is within your reach, because it is born of your own thoughts and actions. And let me leave you with this. In my next message, I will share with you one daily discipline so simple, so easily overlooked, that ensures your mind keeps working for you automatically. Most people ignore it, and that is why they fall back into drifting. But those who practice it make success inevitable. So take the challenge now. Begin today. Choose your thoughts. Direct your mind. Render your service. Persist until the harvest comes. And then join me in the next lesson, where I will show you how to keep this law alive for a lifetime. Because the truth is this: your future is not waiting years from now. It begins in the very next thought you choose.